And now, again, just fall 2022, we have on main campus 5,214. So what you heard is 9,000 something, 5,000 something. That's a pretty significant change over a shorter period. And as I've met people on campus and in the community, what I keep describing is it comes back to our undergraduate in-person student population. We've got a new campus up in Roanoke, we've got online programs, those continue to thrive, but it's the in-person undergraduate experience. So my wife and I came, we loved the university, we were charmed by the town and the people, but we have to somehow find a way to work together bigger than the university. It's really partnering with the city on how do we get others when they visit to feel that same way first time in here. So I'm really focused on not only stabilizing in time, increasing the number of new students we've got, but realistically, and I want to make this clear, my goal is to stabilize the population. I know in the past there's been goals to really try to grow it. Given the national context, stable is good, and I expect it to stabilize by fall 2025. And the other part, it's not just bringing new students to campus. The other part is once we've brought them, to keep them on the campus for their 4-year period, because that also not only helps the numbers, that helps have more expenditure in the city, right? It's good for the tax base of what's available. So what becomes important, again, it's not just how we attract people, which might be around what it looks like, but what are the things that we do together that changes how the community feels together? And what are those opportunities that'll make students want to come and then want to stay? So, that university context, budget-wise, we are stable, we are fine, but that declining student enrollment is not sustainable in its current pattern.
And that brings us with challenges, and we've been aware of that. We've seen some changes to some of the activity on and around campus area with housing. We've seen activity with utility bills and things that have really benefited the city over the long period of time. So we're going to talk through a lot of those things throughout a variety of different topic areas this evening. And again, I want to stress, this is really sort of setting the stage for a lot of the work to take place in boards and commissions and working groups and different activities where we can get deeper in the weeds. After we go through everything and kind of touch base on a number of subjects, then I think we're going to have a little Q&A with the folks up here at the table, because I know we have new members who have not been a part of these discussions as much. And then we're going to go forth and work on these things. But one of the pieces that I did want to talk about, again, I kind of set the stage a little bit. Our population had grown to about 18,000, about the time the university was at 9,200. And it's not a direct correlation of exact number of students in the city population. There's all these formulas that they use to try to figure that out. But having said that, while we've had somewhat of a decline with student population, again, we've seen families moving in, we've seen individuals moving in. It's not as dense a population typically. So where student housing might have had 5 to an apartment, you may have 2 or 3. And so that changes the dynamic a little bit. But we'll talk about that a little bit further along. One of the things I thought we could do is talk first about current projects going on, some of the things that we know are imminent or that are happening now, and then we'll move into some more of the ongoing and visionary things we can talk about. And the hotel is one of the things we're all excited about.
Yeah, so the hotel is an exciting opportunity. Although we're excited, believe it or not, Virginia Tech is almost equally excited, because for their home games, they expect it to be full every weekend when they have their home games. So the hotel isn't just rooms. The difference is that the whole roof of the facility is being set up as a bar and a high-end food locale, which is something that can add value and help, again, convince individuals that this is a great place to come and visit, and also for others, it's part of that tourism piece for the institution. Now, I believe there was a hope at one time that the hotel would be done over the summer. Well, the way the logistics works and the building happens, then it got kicked into the next, and then we got into the spring. Now we're looking at late spring for an opening, so it's taking a while. The hope is right now, and what's being communicated is it'll be open in about April. It may not be fully open at that point. That's the goal, to start bringing in at least some room availability, start the programming. And they have a conference facility that's associated with it. Again, another opportunity to start making Radford a destination. I may have a university bias, you may have a city bias, but all those things are to try to bring other people into our community. Good for visibility, good for funding.
And so to add to that, a great piece of that as we talk about our tourism piece, you know, we've looked at these different industries and we're certainly working across the board with all of our different industry opportunities, but looking at ways to get people to come to Radford, whether it's for a day, a weekend, a week, a month, whatever that works out for them. Having those pieces, having the hotel is going to be central to that, but having people explore Radford for the first time through conferences, that's not something we've had the ability to do for quite a while. So I think that'll be a big game changer for us as far as that goes, and the rooftop restaurant will definitely be a way to enjoy our beautiful outdoor environment here. The tourism piece is crucial, and ecotourism, environmental tourism is a huge part of what we've talked about for the city of Radford. The Riverway and utilizing the river have been really crucial pieces that we've invested in. Just this last year, working at the partnership between the city and the university, we were able to expand the entire Riverway by opening up the area between the Dedman Center and right down at the dog park where it connects to the Riverway. That adds a lot of opportunity through there. It's a beautiful section of the river, but it makes it even more expansive and gives us the opportunity for potentially a next stage. There's this wonderful old rail trestle that goes across the new river from the Dedman Center over to Heron's Landing. We've talked with Pulaski, the university. We're all talking together about possibilities. Now, we need a few $1,000,000, so we got to figure that out. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there to then create something that's different in our area that connects these communities together, and it's part of the Valley to Valley Trail Initiative, which has been going on for several years. It got waylaid a little bit by the pandemic, but being able to connect from Botetourt all the way to Bristol, I think, or to Galax, and to have those trails connect through. That's a huge lift, and it's going to take years and years to get there. But if we could be one of those early pieces making that connection between Radford University, Radford City, Pulaski County, having that crossing will help us. Another real quick piece that I'll get to is the New River Water Trail, but I'll talk about that in just a minute. But augmenting some of this, in addition to the Riverway activity, is going to be some new structures on campus and some new growth. So these are imminent existing things that are coming to be in the next year, 24 months.
Okay. And the one project that I'm aware of, it's a big one, we call it the Archaic Facility, so the Artist Center for Adaptive Innovation and Creativity. And it still doesn't flow off the tongue yet, but I'm getting there. So it's a really high-end combination around the arts and health education. So the labs, the classrooms are built that way, but it also has many additional venues for bringing in the arts. So it's a higher-end performance theater. It is it's a performance space for music. So it, again, provides the opportunity, not just for students, but potentially for community use to bring in more of the arts into our community. You know, when I look at Floyd, who doesn't love Floyd when they visit, right? But it's a celebration of the arts. This is a facility that provides us that opportunity. And I will keep going back to this again and again and again. You may hear it as Radford University. It's in Radford City. This is something that we need to benefit from as a community. I still don't know what that looks like. We have to figure it out, but there's more divisions here between the university and the city than I'm used to in the past. So I really want to get to a place where those walls are much less firm, much more permeable, and so we can define what that looks like together. Again, as we make the campus more vibrant, it helps us students, right? Keeps them here. But that also helps everybody else attract the ongoing tourism and the ongoing, well, potentially people that want to retire in the area and others, right? It just kind of helps lift both. So when you hear me say Radford University, yes, that is my title, that is what I have to say, but think of it as a community amenity, and we just have to figure out how that works well together.
And I think that's a big part of this as we're looking at these new opportunities to partner to bring people to campus, to help utilize facilities, also with sports, talking about activities at the Dedman Center, at the complex that's down there. And we just had an event with the basketball game that was nationally televised that had so many Radford folks who hadn't come out to games for years, and it was wonderful to have city and university join together on a national stage. That helps everybody. And when it was presented as the beautiful New River Valley of Virginia, the beautiful Radford, Virginia. Here's a wonderful basketball game taking place at Radford University.
It was a wonderful basketball game.
And we won. That's the good thing. Along with that, the New River Water Trail is an upcoming thing that I wanted to touch base on real quickly. This has been ongoing for several years, looking at how we use our river, and it's a regional effort that goes beyond the city of Radford. We did receive $1.5 million in federal funding that helps to develop the Radford and Pulaski section of the New River Water Trail. This concept is a blueway, much like the Appalachian Trail is a greenway on a much broader scale. And in fact, we're looking at the possibility of expanding beyond the current scope, that it would encompass all of the New River that is in Virginia. So Giles County all the way down to the headwaters of the New River as they come into Virginia, down into North Carolina and into West Virginia too. Now, these are big plans. There's long-term pieces. But we do know work on the $1.5 million expansion of what's happening is going to start this summer. So that's a very good thing. There'll be a new walk-in boat ramp at Shelter 3 at Bissett Park. That's going to be really helpful for that. And that should provide additional opportunity with Riverview Park, having Bissett Park and then Dudley's Landing, and then even potentially looking at some things adjacent to the Dedman Center and going down in that direction. This is going to be a game-changing piece for us as well. Folks travel all over, from all over to go to the Appalachian Trail. If the New River Blueway, if the water trail can grow to that level, and the Regional Commission and local governments from around the New River Valley are working on this, as well as the state and federal government, this is going to be a destination for people, that folks will come to take the entirety of the New River Water Trail. And so we don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but this is coming and it's relatively imminent. The projects will get going this fall. There'll be some pieces in the city of Radford, some pieces in Pulaski, but altogether it's going to make a Blueway section that's more robust, more well-defined, signage, kiosks, all kinds of things that help make it more usable. So that's a really exciting piece. But when we talk about that, a few years ago there were some discussions about a river campus. Now, that was when we were at 9,000 students, so it's a very different animal at that point. But there's a lot of wonderful riverfront area at the Dedman Center that could be some things. Would you like to address any of that?
And as I go through these points, first of all, I would like to ask Stephanie or Angela to say, you got that wrong, that's not quite right, here's some more information you need, because again, I'm still learning. And by the way, this is a valuable meeting for me, because as you're going through these city opportunities, again, I don't know all of them and what they look like. So this is really helpful, which hopefully is helpful for this meeting overall, because we've probably been doing some individual planning, and the more we are aware of each other's plans and do it together, I think we're more effective. So the River Campus, they did a campus master plan, which in most states is required about every 10 years. It's similar in the Commonwealth. And it kind of looks ahead to what the campus should look like 10 years from now, and it puts new buildings in place. In the last iteration, and I actually don't know when that was completed.
2018.
Yeah, 2017, 18.
So when it was completed in 2018, I mean, it had a really nice concept to take the area that is north of Main Street and develop it into a river campus. And it identified a lot of potential buildings to be, all right, not necessarily this will be this, but how we could develop the space, as the mayor mentioned, as our, the reason for developing that amenity is very few universities are on rivers. And that, again, is potentially an attraction to students, but it's also a way providing them an experience where once they come, they want to stay here because they're coming for that opportunity. The reality is with our number of students that it doesn't make sense to develop a river campus by ourselves. This is one of these things where a public-private partnership from whatever should be developed there makes much more sense than the university going alone. It is in a floodplain. okay? So floating hotels, you know,
Riverboat.
Yeah, riverboat. So again, I don't know what that looks like because that creates an exposure to obviously nature, which can have some bills associated with it and insurance, but it's a beautiful area. And you know, as we think about our plans, it makes sense to develop that, but it makes zero sense to develop that in isolation. Right. So this is one of these, unless it makes sense for both of us, it's a beautiful vision, but it's not gonna go farther than that. So, you know, we have to figure out, is that a property that makes sense? One of the benefits, and again, telling this to others, is when students have amenities where they never have to leave campus, so it's considered safe. That is portrayed in a positive to people that want to come to the institution. But the reality is when you make it a public-private partnership and you start sewing in other businesses on our campuses and vice versa, then it brings those students, they know they can stay here, but the reality is they get to interact with other businesses in the community. And that, to me, is why people want to stay. So again, you hear Radford University, you know, I think it's called the River Campus. From me, think about it as a potential community asset, and how do we co-develop it?
And I think that's one of the pieces why I wanted us to talk about it in conjunction with the water trail. When you're on the river, you're not going to say, okay, now we're at Radford University and it's a totally different experience. It's part of that continued experience. And again, if we're able to do something with the Riverway crossing on the trestle and some other activities there, continue around to where Heron's Landing is and some other things there. This is starting to become something that's even more special. We have some friends in Roanoke who actually are working on a new river concept, not the new river, but a river concept that's new in Wasena Park that's going to be revolutionary, that could be something that makes sense for us too. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I know our Rec Commission, we've got representatives from the Rec Commission here, and I know that's going to be something we're going to focus on. And this summer, the riding the river is going to be better than ever. There's going to be all kinds of opportunities. So growing that makes a lot of sense. That helps with tourism. That helps introduce people here. It gives people things to do. Potentially, if we do this right, it keeps more of our student population in Radford over the summer, which then benefits everybody. So we're making additional opportunities in different places. Speaking of opportunities, something that Angela and I have talked about. Angela has moved into a new role as a Vice President for Economic Development, but she has a whole lot of stuff. So there's a whole lot. But for several years, she's gotten really sick of me saying, you know what? A hub in downtown Radford to help business makes all kinds of sense for Radford University and Radford City. How can we figure this out? But she has worked diligently leading an effort with the president and with the leadership team to try to figure some things out. Now, we're very, very early in this. But Angela, could you talk just briefly about the hub at Radford and what that might look like just from a business perspective?
Sure. And so part of what we're talking about is creating what we call the hub at Radford. And it doesn't necessarily say the hub at Radford University, but the hub at Radford. And ideally, it's a co-located place where it is a center for economic development to help businesses thrive in the city. We understand what the needs are of businesses, as well as bringing workforce development training. We're talking about co-locating the Vinod Chatra Impact Lab, which does online workforce development in the areas of cybersecurity, geospatial intelligence, training for K through 12 teachers, as well as data science. So also giving a way for employers and employees to upskill their talents for their employees. But the nice thing about this space is really what could it bring to the region? What gaps exist in the region, and where can we locate that here in Radford City? So very early on in the talks right now, the location is highlighted to be at the old SunTrust building, which 1000 Main, and so it's a great opportunity to bring business expertise near campus, but more accessible to Radford citizens as well as those in the region that need it. And so we're working diligently to figure out how we leverage that space in a way that'll be meaningful both for the community and ideally beyond the community, the New River Valley, but benefit the area that we're in.
And I'm excited about this because, again, it makes all kinds of sense for folks that are thinking about locating business here that have an idea, it makes sense that the Chatra Impact Lab provides an opportunity for training in things that some people cannot get without a four-year degree, or maybe they've already been working in the field, they've had their degree a number of years ago. This gives them a new opportunity. This is another one of those game changers that could help businesses grow in downtown, existing businesses, new businesses, business concepts. And so it does a number of things. At its growth and as it moves forward, obviously there's the simple way of somebody has a great business idea, it helps to cultivate that. Angela, working with Kim Repass, the city's economic development director, can help businesses along and help guide them through the process to go further along. It can help develop more of East Main Street and throughout the city as businesses locate here, as they see opportunity in Radford. One really neat thing, and this is something the president has alluded to, retaining students while they're students, but also those first few years after graduation. A lot of Radford students would love to stay here. Finding those opportunities, helping them create those opportunities makes all the difference in the world. And some students need to work when they're in school. There's an opportunity here. Working with the Radford University Alumni Network, working with other businesses around the Commonwealth to potentially have business in the city of Radford for companies that don't exist anywhere around here. And having our students, having our community members working for those organizations. So there's a lot, and there's a lot to do to get it there. But this is one of the most exciting things that could be transformative for the university, for the city, right there at the corner of Tyler and Main in the old SunTrust building. And it dovetails perfectly with what we've been working on for 4 years with looking to enhance East Main Street. So really, for a decade, we've been working on elements in West Main and in other areas. 25, 30 years ago, we did a lot of work on East Radford, kind of moved focus to other areas. Former Mayor Starnes is here. I know he had a lot of hand in helping to bring Main Street Radford and do other things that helped our East End grow. Well, times have changed and things have moved on, and it's time to revisit that area. So for the last 4 years, we've engaged with citizens and businesses and property owners to try to say, what could East Main become? The New River Valley Regional Commission has put together some plans and helped us with this, and we've worked diligently to try to come up with some concepts where the city can take the public areas and enhance some things and work with private partners to enhance other spaces. So again, just like this hub could be transformative from a programming, business, and location space, other spaces could grow. And David, if you don't mind turning your mic on, and David Ridpath, our city manager, can you share just a little bit about what's going on with East Main Street and where we're going?
Sure. The East Main project, as you mentioned, Mayor, began just ahead of the COVID times and then slowed way down for a couple of years. We have ARC funding, a combination of ARPA funding, as well as some other grants and things that are going into it. But our goal is to make East Main look as good as we've got the rest of our business community looking. Increase the lighting down there. Lighting has been a big issue. The last time Main Street revitalization occurred was about 35 years ago, and it's going to include a bikeway, walkway, extensive amount of landscaping, and then it's going to have a plaza area where you can have special events, food trucks, things like that. Better reorganized parking. There'll be a little less parking. The way it's reorganized, you're actually going to recognize some spaces that you haven't seen in the past. Improving our loading zones, and just overall the sidewalks are in bad shape. So an overall improvement plus a repave from one end to the other, and then pedestrian enhancements at all the intersections.
So
baskets, places for flags. It'll be a really nice experience, both for vehicles, pedestrians, and the bikers.
some of the things that have been transformative in West End that have made it a place that's got a gravity to it for people from around the New River Valley, for people in the community. We're going to replicate some of that concept in East Radford. And again, this dovetails perfectly with trying to bring in business, trying to help make better use of the spaces that we have available and get us to a place where it's a destination, where it's an attraction, and again, has that gravity that pulls people in.
Also add to that,
go ahead.
Wayfinding is another big part of it, and that connection to the river. We're always amazed. You live in Radford, people come and visit, but unless you cross Memorial Bridge, or you're down at the Devon Center, or up at Riverview Park, you don't really know that you're on the river. We're surrounded three sides by the river, so that connection is important to get folks down there to the river, and then from the river as well to Main Street, both east and west. So it's big projects ahead for us.
And this is going to take several years. This is not something that's going to happen this summer and be done, but you'll be seeing more of it this summer. And the city has gone out and gotten $700,000 from the Appalachian Regional Commission to help us with some pathways to get to and from downtown, to get to the Riverway, to get to areas that will connect all of these areas of interest in the city. So again, it's all starting to come together to make sense for folks. Let's say we bring in people to work. This allows them to utilize the Riverway to get down to the river at lunchtime if they want to. Or people that are just visiting throughout the community doing tourist things coming into our downtown. Another element that we think makes sense is having multiple spaces throughout the city where you can have music and entertainment, but also looking at the concept of a venue. We've been trying to grow that. We've fortunately had some wonderful partners in having music at their restaurants and at their locales. That's helped tremendously, and we're getting more and more music going again every night of the week. But imagine if there's 5 or 6 nights a week of music in Radford with some big concerts. And this summer we had some concerts here at Glencoe, and for the last few years we've been working on that kind of thing to try to build up that tourism activity, but also quality of life. But one thing the city and university have been talking about for some time is a performance venue. And what might that look like? What's our time frame, and where could we go from there? Could you address a little bit about what you've been thinking?
A little bit, and then I'm going to ask my colleagues to jump in. So even when I was interviewing here, I'd heard that the university and the city had been planning an amphitheater or something like it for some time, and I was immediately captivated by that. Because in terms of, again, a student resource, trying to provide an ongoing music programming that is bigger than what we can do, that's important for students. They do want that type of experience. But a university cannot build and fully use an amphitheater with the student population that we have. So it's an opportunity for us to work together and figure out how to co-program it. I mean, I also look at this as a possibility of employment for our students, possibly on stage performing, but more likely the ones that are actually helping to, kind of maintain and run the events that as they move forward, because a lot of universities find it difficult, a lot of students find it difficult to make college affordable. And even if it is affordable, it's difficult for them to see that unless they can see the employment lines at the same time that they're a student. So if we're able to provide X number of positions for students working at an amphitheater, it actually helps them, again, want to come, want to stay, helps the programming and tourism, and I think that this could be a tourism boon. So I think that that's kind of I'm excited to be going to it. So I mean, I want to jump past this whole process and go to where it's built. But I don't know, Stephanie or Angela, did you want to comment more on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, as we've been having really early conversations, is to think about all of the different entertainment opportunities within Radford. And so it's the amphitheater, but it's also, Preston Hall, or the new CAIC building, Center for Adaptive Innovation and Creativity. How do we think about pop-up venues? How do we think about those spaces? How do we think about leveraging performances from Radford University, Radford High School, and providing all those opportunities? And so I think this is a really exciting project to think about over the next few years. How do we build that place where it's a destination with multiple ways of thinking about entertainment and theater and just pop-up performances, and really supporting some grassroots performances. And so we're excited to kind of continue the conversation and think about what does that look like from east to west and north of Radford, of places that we could do this.
I've been collecting questions, but I'm afraid it's going to be disjointed by the time we get to the end of it. So let me just pop in here real quick. I know that when the university announced that they were going to be moving forward with a venue, we were a little bit surprised by that, because we were all also speaking loudly about wanting to do something. So I love that we're looking at a collaborative effort. One thing that I'm not sure of, location is going to be really important, and we don't have a whole lot of land. And so I was wondering, did you guys already identify a parcel of land you were wanting to develop, or?
I think we are circling around areas, and I think both the city and the university did previous studies, and so trying to identify areas where it solves multiple things, right? So how is this in addition to what already exists? How do we drive traffic downtown into the river? And so, our next step is to really think through what is that exact location, and then how do we do deeper studies? Because each area had opportunities to kind of think through. And so I think we're at that point where we're kind of circulating around what that location.
So your location was down by the water in the potential floodplain, because we're kind of dealing, obviously, with that same issue,
Yes.
but that is a lovely place for it, just that darn
Well,
rising water.
and trying to think through all of that and try to figure out, how can we meet several goals with this? The performance is one thing. Having a district that can generate other business activity, having activities that can go on and, move us forward, trying to pull everything together so that we're able to, really serve many masters with this, so that it's not just a one-time thing, and go from there. What did you want to add?
I was thinking kind of on the same thought train of Jesse, is I think one of the things we're also looking for too is how to bring those students more to Central Radford, to the breweries, to Brick House. How can we get them in other places in Radford too? So that's something that I think we've kind of thought about and heard, because certainly that would be a huge revenue stream for a lot of the citizens and small businesses, and something to keep in mind as you think about that.
So that's going to be a lot of discussion on that. That's one we've not been able to finalize yet. And I think there's pros and cons to everything. So ultimately, we're going to have to come around something. I do think it's important to get Rec Commission, Tourism Commission, a whole lot of folks together, look at what we can do, what makes sense from a university perspective, what makes sense from a city perspective, and try to solve as many of those problems as we can.
Well, my other question is, have we, as a university and city, really got together and looked, we have been doing the same thing just individually, where we have had, the same thing you're having, people look at the different spaces and determine if that's going to be, feasible or not. So we have two different reports. I think probably be really important to get those reports together, and city and university together. I feel like we're kind of circling around each other. We probably need to be moving now.
We have actually looked at both, so we have looked at both plans
Right.
to see, and, interestingly enough, there's overlap, right, as we
I
have.
would hope. I would hope, right.
That we have, and so I think that's how we're coming to, like, we're having conversations, even in the conversation of how to get students to all along sides, like, how do we think about integrated marketing? How do we think about building awareness? Because that does happen for students to know the entire city of Bradford, in addition to this opportunity in terms of performance. And I think, as we've been talking about not really zones, but all of the places where entertainment happens, this facility won't just serve one place. There's a lot of other places that we've not been maximizing on both ends throughout the city. And so I think we've approached it, at least in the initial conversation, as clean slate, let's start from the beginning and let's look at all of the information, and then how do we figure out what's the next step? So those have started, but again,
We need to get more people around the table and have those discussions.
If I could, to Seth, to your question, the one thing I don't want people to do is to look at projects in isolation, because if this is the only project we do together, that's one structure, that's one flow, but I want to be here for a long time, okay? And so it's, we've talked on the campus a little bit about, well, what are the things like that we do as a university that we could plant into the city to actually help our students become more embedded and increase that traffic. So, an amphitheater or performance might be part of that, but there's all these other opportunities. And again, if we do one thing at a time and don't think about the others, it's not comprehensive, and we'll get stuck in the details with the one. It's got to be part of a bigger plan, or at least that's how I'm trying to think about it.
Well, and even looking at East Main Street, some things that are currently on campus, it might make sense if they were downtown. And those are things we can work on together as we go through. But I think that's one of our goals, is to get people out in the community to get the community on campus areas to kind of erase some of those barriers and to have people feel welcome in both places. It's crazy at times when I think about the facilities that we have at the university. I ride my bike on the Riverway a lot of times, and I go down to baseball games. And I don't see as many people as I'd like to see. Or I come to stuff at the rec center, and I think there's activities and opportunities for people from the university community to come to. So again, finding those barriers and erasing them, I think will help everybody and accomplish just what you're talking about and get us to that place. We got a little more time to keep going through a few things before we get to a lot more Q&A. One of the big things that has existed in Radford for more than a century has been our power. And the city being a power operator. The university has been looking for at least a dozen years at the possibility of altering the way that the power is provided and doing some things. I don't want to get into a lot of detail on that, but the cogen facility that has been proposed is something that's been a discussion recently, and a lot of people are concerned about it. How does that affect everything? I'm going to say at the top, I know we don't have all the answers on the city side. I know the university doesn't have all the answers on the university side. We're still trying to figure everything out. But could you all speak just a little bit about the cogen facility, what you can, and we can talk through that just a little bit.
Sure, and I will start just briefly. I think there's maybe some misunderstanding. The funding hasn't been sought. The funding is already approved.
Right.
So that funding is in hand, and that was approved last year. And so we're working through the details now of how to finalize that. I mean, or finalize the construction. There's just a couple of things that, the university continues to try to move towards carbon neutrality. The institution has signed off on what's called the Presidential Climate Commitment, and by 2040 to be carbon neutral as an institution. That does not mean energy neutral. There's a lot of energy needs that are still there, but the cogen facility is something that is going to lower the university's footprint. And with that facility, it's really about timing. How does it work? How does it integrate with the city's facilities? But the funding is there to be built. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you're able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still very much in preliminary design phases of the project, determining, we want to make sure that we understand fully the impact to the city, the impact to the institution, and kind of what we're trying to achieve. But also know the impact that it has on the city and how can we work together in collaborative ways to not have it harm either way, but then we can still meet the legislative intent of what was approved by the Commonwealth.
And I will add a little bit. Again, there may be some misunderstanding. So the university will certainly have a budget savings because it is a more cost-effective for the university to burn natural gas through this facility than to purchase electricity. It's just more cost efficient for us. But to the standing way that the city operates, there is an amount that the city makes based on the purchase of electricity. So there's a delta there. If we have a savings, then there's income that has been lost to the city. I think part of this is still trying to understand how much that is, right? But when we identify that, our goal is not to run to the hills with the money. We're in this as a partnership. If there's that gap, what do we reinvest in, or what are the ways that we can partner together so it's not felt as a loss, it's just felt as a more targeted way to develop together. So yes, overall this saves us funding, but again, we're not intending to do this as a way to take money from the city and run. But we don't know what the numbers are yet, and we do need to work through that so we can develop what the appropriate partnership plans are with that type of savings.
And I positioned this on our discussion at this place for a reason, because if you've heard all the things we've talked about, it's possibilities that are going to require money. And there's not a giant bag of money sitting out back of this building that we're going to dip into. We're going to have to find resources all over. Grant money, support money from donors and other investors, all kinds of things that can happen. But as we look through these things, while there are challenges we're going to face, there's so many more opportunities that are going to benefit quality of life, that are going to provide tourism, recreation, and business opportunity that are going to grow the Radford economy that may equal or surpass some of the challenges we have. Again, we don't know what this is ultimately going to look like. We've guesstimated some of it, we've looked at some of that, and actually for several years, this discussion has gone on for a long time. And the city has been looking at power in general, and we're going to have a work session coming up end of February, beginning of March, talking about power. We're moving into a new phase with a new electric contract. Having that as a resource is a wonderful thing, but its primary focus is to provide reliable power to the citizens of Radford. Having the excess money that we're able to bring in has allowed us to do a lot of things. We're hoping to maintain as much of that as possible. There's a lot of questions we just don't have answers to yet, and we're working through that. So we've had work sessions, multiple work sessions over the last couple of years talking about this. We've talked about the ability to make some change with some battery storage, which is a very innovative way of adding capacity without generation that can help us both in terms of reliability but also profitability. And to keep these systems in place that will do positive things for the city of Radford. But I encourage everyone to join us when we have our work session on power, because there's a whole lot to this. And the cogen, while it's on the university side, that's one piece of this great big puzzle. We're going to be looking at more renewable power potentially, this battery storage concept, and how we navigate a new power market that's out there in the world too. So that'll be part of this conversation and go from there. I want to keep us going, and I want to get to some more discussion and questions and answers on this. One of the things that we've faced as we're looking long-term for the city, we have a number of buildings that served us really well at one point in time. Today, a lot of them don't serve us in the same way, whether it's an old gas station or an old apartment building or something that just isn't meeting the needs of the modern folks. We've tried to approach this in a number of ways. Through zoning and through code, we have worked, the Planning Commission has worked to say, how can we maximize what we have in our 10 square miles? If there are things we can do that will cause areas to be renovated and fixed up, fantastic, let's do that, and let's get these buildings back in use in some way, shape, or form. If there are other places that don't service us as well, sometimes it's addition by subtraction, and that we're able to provide land for redevelopment for some things that may be new concepts, for some things that may be existing concepts in other places. So I think there's a whole lot going on with that, and there's going to be a number of properties in Radford, more likely than not, that are going to change in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. That is a very good thing. There are properties we have seen that have been distressed for decades that have just sat there. Getting that land into something usable that may be a temporary role that will ultimately transform into something else that prepares us for that next phase, that's a huge piece of this. The other part of it is looking at what we have here. Many homes in Radford were built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Some of those homes are very desirable, some are not so desirable to modern families. How do we transform some of that to get those neighborhoods into better places? I would like to talk about student population, but I'm actually going to jump ahead on our notes and talk just a little bit about neighborhoods and what we're looking at. And the president and several of the leadership team and myself have talked about this. 80% of the people who work at Radford University live more than 10 miles from the center of campus. How amazing would it be if we could help work throughout the city of Radford to try to say, maybe this is where you want to call home. Maybe being able to walk to work, maybe being able to utilize some of these facilities, maybe being part of the Radford, Virginia team makes sense for you. Yeah. Can you address that a little bit?
And I just want to add one thing from Planning Commission that we had kind of talked about that maybe we could partnership with you guys is for new hires having a welcome package. I don't know if you have something or something we could do with getting them in touch with real estate agents in the area, some maps of the city, some things to do. I think that would be a small, cheap, easy startup, something to consider. But yeah, and we had talked about it in Planning Commission, and it just kind of ties into this.
So I learned about this phenomena of greater than 80% of the employees living more than 10 miles from the city. And the problem with that is we're one of the biggest employers, right? And from state dollars coming in and tuition coming in, then when the people live away, well, that's where they grocery shop, that's where they're paying their mortgages, that's where they're spending their money in their communities. Again, it's not wrong, but Seth, to your point, you know, are we encouraging people enough to be local? And you know, the way that Radford City works, and maybe there's partnership dollars with Fair Lawn, but as we need to find ways to develop property to keep our employees here, so they're expending here. And that may not be the stock of current houses,
Right.
because a lot of them have so much work to do, that's difficult to get a new employee to take on that cost burden. So again, I don't know what it looks like. I'm not going to solve it by next year, but thinking ahead, how do we make a plan so we can encourage, so we have the opportunity for our new employees to settle locally, and then how do we work together to encourage them to do so? Because again, I'm going to be biased. I live in the city. I want the city to thrive too, and I'd like to be immersed in lots of community members. So I'd love to see them stay local.
And it changes the dynamic as we have more people here that work here, live here, play here, that engage
Yep.
here in all kinds of ways. And so really the last 4 years especially has been focused on how do we make that more possible as we move forward, looking at some neighborhoods through zoning, through code, through other elements. How can we reimagine some neighborhoods, both in West and East Radford, to say, you know, at one time this was a robust family neighborhood. It's been different types of housing for a while. Can it go back to something else? We're already seeing some of that happen individually, where some places that might have been rented as a student house have been renovated and changed, and their families living there. People are making adjustments to their property as the rental market has changed. I think getting the Department of Housing and Community Development involved at the state level, working through a number of different agencies to have quality, affordable housing in Radford that makes sense for young professionals, that makes sense for families that want to live here. The Regional Commission, we're working on this at a high level and working to try to create funds so that more people can afford housing in communities. Plus, we're seeing overall growth in the New River Valley. This is a desirable place to be. Some markets are becoming too expensive for families and young professionals to live in. I think it's a good target area for us. And if we look at downtown, I'm going to go back to the East Main project again. There is a score of new housing projects taking place in the upper level of buildings all throughout East Radford. That is perfect for some retirees. That's perfect for young professionals. That's perfect for folks who are maybe looking for a little different living environment than what's offered in Radford and the New River Valley. So these are exciting things, and I wanted to bring this up especially because this is the longer term vision. We're not going to do this in a year, 2 years, even 5 years. We'll see the seeds sown, and we'll start to see things changing, but it didn't get to the status it is now in a year or 2 or 5 years. So turning this boat around is going to take us a little while. But I think this is one of the most exciting pieces of everything we've talked about. Growing up in Radford, most of the areas that are student housing or are some rental housing were family homes. And there were tons and tons of families here. We just renovated McCarg School, and we've prepared it for that next generation of families coming here to Radford. I think we're setting the stage for that next golden opportunity where Radford's sort of in the sweet spot for a lot of folks, and that we're building on it. I was talking with someone about this the other day and said, great, where's all that money going to come from? And that's a good question. We don't have all those answers, but I think it is an investment opportunity. I think there's state and federal dollars that we can use to do the public piece. I think there's redevelopment opportunities. And so properties that may, again, be in a distressed state now, may disappear for a while and become something else as we get to that interim of how that could transform into other things. I think the important thing now is to clean up as much as we can, to get us to a good place where we're removing some of the things that keep people from wanting to be in a space, and then working together. And we're going to need everybody. We're going to need Planning Commission. We're going to need people from the real estate community. We're going to need people who own properties and who are looking to develop to all be around this table to have this discussion to say, what can we do? Are there models in other communities we can look at? And how can we build that up?
Well, and I think we have to be really careful, because I think when people hear 80% of the folks that work at our U are not living here, I have to tell you, and being in real estate, it's not because they don't desire to be
Right,
here.
right.
They're not in conflict with the city.
Right.
The other day, I was looking for someone who wants to come to Radford, and we have 5 listings. 2 are not built, one's $1 million. So I think council has been very active in pursuing the opportunities where we do have developers that are looking at the remaining land we have to try to address some of that, but, we're
But
sort of
working to
very-
reimagine these neighborhoods, I talk to families every day that have moved here and others who would like to. If we could have the right housing stock, if we could reimagine some neighborhoods, if we could get neighborhoods in better shape, bringing things up to certain standards, going in and doing new projects in neighborhoods to help it feel more like a place where people want to invest their dollars and their energy. That'll get us where we want to go. And we've been doing some of this already. We need to do more, but I think this provides us an opportunity. Reimagining the area on east and west of the university, and what does that look like and how does that work for the city? I rode my bike through those areas all throughout my childhood. I would love it if we returned to a time where there's student housing, faculty housing, staff housing, family housing, all of it. Brings its own challenges, it brings its own opportunities, and we have to go from there. Real quickly before we just open up the floor and talk a little bit more, and we're close to schedule, which is hard to believe. A robust and sustainable future. This is where I want to leave us before we talk about some of these other things. This has got to be the goal for Radford University, for Radford City. Whatever we do has to make sense on a sustainable level. That it's something that's not just a solution for the next 4 or 5 years, and it's not something that's built out so far that we'll never get there. For Radford to maintain its status as a city and all the benefits and all the opportunities that we enjoy, we have to generate a certain amount of revenue. We have to have people that are focused here. We have to be invested in this community. So that's going to be a lot of work on everybody's part to get there. We're hearing things that are opportunities that meet certain needs. It doesn't get us all the way home, but it gets us way down the road. Having the Foundry property as a possible opportunity for future economic development, that's huge. Having entertainment opportunities, better utilization of the river, using our natural assets and the things that we have here, partnering as Radford University and Radford City together to attract people here, whether they're going to school or coming here for a visit, or they decide they want to make it their forever home. Those are things that are going to create that sustainable future and make it robust to where we're worried about how we're spending all that money coming in. We're worried because we have so much activity going on that there's new things happening all the time and it's hard to keep up. I was talking with a building official. A lot is going on. They're staying very, very busy right now. That's a great thing, but it's going to take a little more of that activity. Can you speak to that from a Radford University perspective?
As we've visited several times in this conversation, nothing we can do by ourselves as an institution is going to help us with the challenges that we've got. We have a beautiful campus, we've got fabulous faculty, we've got great programs. That's not what's been causing us challenges. The future is about how to integrate the university with the community, the amenities that are around it, to allow students to see why Radford University is an educational destination and not just a local university to go to, because it's deserving of being a destination. We have to work together, longer-term plans to make that viable. I mean, housing itself, that is a long-term project. I mean, and that's one item, right? So there's integrated and complicated. We can't do it alone, which is part of the rationale for this meeting, to how to start planning for the future. And I also just, again, want to make sure that people are hearing directly the things I can and cannot do. So I can't change the number of students we had this fall semester on our campus, okay? That happened, right? That's just over, that was 52-14 students on our main campus. There is an inertia to students. I can't say next year, suddenly, here's all these new students in our community. And in fact, because of the retention during COVID, we are going to be down about 400 students next fall. The fall after will be about another 100, and then we will settle down at about another 100 students in fall 2025. My hope is to improve upon that. But right now, with the data where we're at, we'll be at about 4,600 students in Radford, on the main campus in fall 2025. I have limited ability to steer that. It's the future beyond that. If we stabilize at that, that's at least a point of stability, and stability in a community is a good thing, okay? Longer term, how do we partner together to grow that? Because I believe for the students that we serve, yes, many in the South Side and Southwest Virginia, but also many from the East Coast of Virginia, this is a place where they can thrive unlike at other institutions. So we have to work together to provide them that opportunity. Again, I can't make changes overnight. I just can't. I wish I had that pixie dust. And if anybody has it, please let me know. I want to borrow some. But it is about long-term strategic planning, occasional pains together to get there. But year over year, it will be improvement if we plan and we work together.
I think one of the areas where we really haven't done as much in recent years, COVID really kind of knocked us back on this. The City-University Joint Commission is going to be crucial to a lot of these partnerships, a lot of this planning, and addressing a lot of the issues. So Kelly, it's going to be all kinds of fun, but I think it's going to be a good place, and hopefully a place where a lot of great ideas can be discussed and generated, and moving us in a place that I think will start to help make that vision come clearer and clearer. One of the things we started a couple of years ago and have worked on a lot in 2022 is the Neighborhood Project, where we're taking a neighborhood or a couple of neighborhoods, we're meeting with the folks that live there and saying, what are your concerns? How do we work through all of this? We can't do everything at once, but we can do baby steps and do down payments, and then what we start to see is private investment that comes right after we make the public investment. I see that happening on both east and west of campus. I see that happening in West Radford in different ways. Let's talk about what these challenges are. What is your neighborhood problem? What is your concern? Is it lighting? Is it sidewalks? Is it access? Is it, that there's this horrible issue that we're just really unaware of that we can deal with and start to make changes? Doing those things move the needle enough to start getting more of that excitement and private investment going, to get more of those partnerships moving in a new way. I've said way too much. Some of us have talked a whole bunch, but I wanted to open up the floor to some folks we haven't heard from tonight. Kelly, Bobby, do you have any questions or any comments that you want to make thus far?
Yeah, I've got several comments.
Can you grab the mic towards you a little bit?
Yeah, I could do that. One thing Jesse mentioned, housing. As we all know, there's just not enough housing here. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to live here, but from what I've seen in the past, when a house goes on the market, it becomes a bidding war, which it's good, people want to come here. But it's bad because house prices went up and up and up. So that's not good. So I don't think there's an issue of people wanting to come here. I think we just can't supply and demand. The demand for houses we don't have. So that's the reason why, like, RU, they're going outside of that 10-mile radius, going elsewhere because there's housing. I think number two, the New River. I love the New River. I mean, it's a gold mine. Now, how do you take a gold mine that's a flood zone, and make money, build a property there? I don't know, but it is a gold mine, and I think we're on the right track as far as looking seriously at that. So I think that's good. Number three, I think we all need to get together again, and it needs to be just like neighbors. Mm-hmm. We just need to get together, just sit down and talk, like we were talking earlier. I think we need to do that more often, and I want to thank Brett so much for helping to build a bridge. Mayor and everybody else here, we built the bridge. We're here. So if we can just continue the journey, work together, and it's kind of crazy. If we got two ideas going, one's on the west end, one's on the east end, why not build that bridge, put them together, save money, and we work together on it. I mean, it's just logical and just a good thing to do, you know, and that way, as far as the PR part, I mean, you got RU involved, you got the city involved, so everybody's gonna be tooting their own horn, and everybody's going to the same place, instead of splitting
Sure.
our population and going two different sides, which is, you know, it's feasible, but, you know, can you maintain it when you split the money and you split the population? So, so I think we've got a lot of good things going for us, but I'm excited that we are here talking. So, and the only goal that I have at this meeting is to, hopefully we can come up with a time frame. And I know everybody's got to look at their calendar, but we can come up with a time frame to say, let's try to do this every so often, go through the same process. Number one, you're learning the process by being here. So that's part of it. So we can go through this again, and the next time we can, we're kind of right now just kind of feeding off each other and getting to know each other. Well, the next time, we'll go back and think about it, and and as they say, chew on it, and then come back with more ideas. So I think that's a way to go, and we, like we were saying a little bit ago, we all have so much in common. And when we sit down and talk, you think, wow, we got more in common than what I thought. So it's all good. So hopefully we can do this again and continue this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Callie, what do you think?
I was going to mention something that Jesse did, that, where is the amphitheater going to go? You guys seem like you've been looking at places. We've obviously been doing the same thing. It doesn't really make a lot of sense unless we look at it together. Everybody's talking about collaborating and working together, and I think that's wonderful. And I know that from what I've heard, we haven't seen that in Radford in quite some time, a president that's really wanting to invest in the community, and I think we're all very happy with that. So that's good, but we need to use our resources together to try to move forward, because if we're both doing the same thing, it's not really gonna help a lot. As far as the housing thing goes, I manage several properties in Radford. Most of them are on near campus on the light side, and they're very run down. And it's personally, I've put a lot of money into getting them renovated to where they are going to be someplace where working students, new professors, admins, things like that are going to want to live, and I'm one of the people that's working to do that. And I know Jesse is probably working really hard as well. One of the challenges is, even if you fixed one or two houses up, I have 4 right in a square radius on Clement Street. I can fix all 4 of those up and have my little 4-square community, but it's not going to make it a place where a family is going to live because of the surrounding area. There's a lot of issues with violence and firearms and gangs and drugs and things like that. And I'm not saying it's just a Radford University thing. It's also, something that everybody's dealing with. Is there something on the radar for trying to implement some kind of discipline that may have used to been there before the past few presidents have come along? I know that long ago they had a 3-strike rule. Is there some kind of, when students do things that are unsavory or maybe they shouldn't be doing, is there some kind of, repercussions for that RU has to try to mitigate having those types of things and stop them from becoming a huge problem? Because even if you have the housing, if the surrounding area is not a place where families or young adults or retirement people are going to want to live, I don't care how nice the house is, they're not going to want to come. So that's a problem that I run into.
Okay. Yeah, so Kelly, it's the concept of kind of you can't just take a property and then lift the properties around it. It actually, you have to have a plan that brings everything up together. And to be honest with you, I know we are one of the safest communities, safest college towns in the nation. So I don't know the role of our students relative to others, in the community. It's just something I'm not aware of yet. But I'd be more than happy to look into to see what our students are doing, if they are part of those challenges. And then, again, how do you create the atmosphere where those students are always doing the right thing? College students are going to occasionally get something wrong. I think,
well, yeah.
I think,
I was
I was
one.
there at one point, yeah.
I
So,
was one that
but
did
it's really,
several
but they are part of a community, and if there's ownership that we need to take for some of that, then we, again, can work with the community to figure out what that looks like. Because, again, if our students may be doing things that are causing challenges, but they're living off campus, we may not know about it. So that's where having kind of closer relationships and discussions could be very, very helpful.
Yeah, so maybe set up something, we can all get together and have a outside work session with the chief or the police department, or you, yes.
That's the perfect
I'm working
place for
on it.
that.
I'm
There you
working
go.
on it.
And actually, that's some of the discussion we've had historically
Yes.
at Joint Commission. Again, we've had wonderful leadership. Dr. Harshberger, Susan Trageser, co-chairs of that. I think you may get an opportunity to be a co-chair of the commission. And I think that's a great place for those discussions and to talk about it. Zeroing in on areas that maybe are more the centerpiece of some of those challenges. What are those? Sometimes it's the area east and west of campus. Sometimes it's further west into the city. There's a whole host of things. I think there's nothing off the table that we can have these discussions. One thing you mentioned that I think is really important, ownership. Feeling like you're part of a community. That's one of the things I'm hoping that we can do more of with the neighborhood project and actually talking to some of the students and some of the property owners that live east and west of campus. And how can people take more ownership of their neighborhood and have some neighborhood pride? That yes, they may only be here for school, but this is their home for 2, 4, however many years. Make this more than just a place where you're staying. Make it a place where you might want to stay ultimately. And so I think that's a big part of it. But it's a heavy lift, and it's something that's going to take it baby step by baby step to get there. So Joint Commission is going to be a great starting place. I think there's certainly other places to go from there. But helping make that more active, I think, will be really helpful for us. And something that can address some of these challenges. We all have the challenges throughout the community. Every community is dealing with it. One thing we had with some of our sister communities in Blacksburg having some of the same issues, we have our chief talk with their chief. We have our council talk with their council. We're working together to say, how can we address some of these problems as a region as opposed to just individual neighborhoods, individual communities? So there's a big piece of that. Jesse, you have anything else?
I have a ton of stuff. Do you want to come back, or do you
I'll
want
come back. Seth, what do you have?
I don't know that it's getting any shorter over here, but so, no. I first want to start out by saying thank you guys so much for taking this initial first step. I think my only first official complaint is, where were you 10 years ago? Why didn't you come to us sooner? But we wish you were here, but we're glad to have you, and we're really appreciative for this opportunity to sit down and talk. I think this goes a long way. I think some of the concerns that I hear or thoughts is that there's a lack of transparency or secrecy between the relationship between the city and RU. And I think this is a good first step of kind of putting it out there, where we're sitting down, we're having talks about a lot of important issues that people have heard a little bits and pieces about, and we've heard little bits and pieces about, and us coming together and working, I think that goes a long way, because, in a lot of ways over the past, there's a lot of trust that's been lost. And there's, the RU and Radford, and we need to be one. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. And, we have some work to do. But with that being said, I really do appreciate this. And one of the biggest questions I have is, and I think we've touched all around this, is, 45% of the real estate in Radford is untaxable. And 35% of that is RU. And so I'll ask the question and then tell you why I'm asking it. My question is, do you, in the near future, foresee taking more properties off the tax rolls that are close by? And the reason I ask is this, our real estate tax is how we fund our schools. And we have school board, and we have, A lot of educators coming to us with, a new stadium needs to be built. The high school's in disarray. We just took on McCarg. So anytime something comes off the tax rolls, it's challenging for us to meet these needs. If you could just kind of maybe long-term plans, and I know you can't get too specific, but just generally, that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, Seth, and it's fair. I mean, one of the things that no university can do is say, well, we're interested in property X, because as soon as you do, the price of
Value,
playing
yeah.
poker just went up,
doubt,
right?
no
So it just, that said, our campus is built for more students than it currently has. And we have a very, very high-end campus. So we don't need more facilities. And one of the or at least not that I'm aware of, you all can jump in. So part of the challenge is sometimes when universities are planning for growth or other things, they are looking at acquiring more significant pieces of property for that next building project. There is nothing on my radar, at least in Radford, like up in Roanoke, we do need to build a new location for our UC campus. That's different. I can say that, yes, we need a property up there. We're going to be working on that. Right. Here, I don't see big purchases like that. But again, that long-term planning, what makes sense for consolidating our housing stock or developing it in ways that are appropriate to support our students in certain communities so it might not cause other challenges if they exist. Those are things which may continue shifting things, but I believe we have sufficient housing stock and other footprint, so I don't see anything big. That said, right around the immediate campus, we are always going to be trying to increase the improved look of the institution. In addition, by subtraction, I think, so there could be some of those moves to try to create a more just that inviting look to campus on the outside as well.
Sure. And the other thing I kind of wanted to circle back to, and I kind of, with the amphitheater, I think we've kind of bounced it around. I love that we're getting together and talking about this and talking about how to bring these together. I would love to see almost as, are you coming to Radford? Are you coming, meeting us somewhere? Because there's always this perception of, well, if it's on East End, it's RU. If it's on West End, it's Radford. And finding somewhere where we can do something together. I just think it would be a really positive image. And whether it's the amphitheater or whether it's something else, I think a project of bringing RU into Middle Radford, West End Radford, something of that nature would go a long way for a lot of people. And just something to keep in mind as you guys, brainstorm and look at projects. I just think from an aesthetic point of view and as a healing and moving forward, I think RU meeting Radford in the middle of Radford to West End Radford would just be a token of appreciation, at least for me.
Yep.
So
that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I'll just thank you guys so much for this opportunity, and I've enjoyed talking with you. So thank you.
All right, Jesse.
I got to figure out how to read all this.
And it all doesn't have to be solved tonight.
Another point when we're talking about housing and student housing, I know that, when I'm out with the chief, I am amazed at how much of our of our housing is actually off campus. It's held by individuals, by investors, and so it's a complicated issue when you talk about who's policing it. But I will say, I have noticed that our chief and the officers spend a great deal of time doing other things than just enforcing. I know when we're patrolling on the weekends, they're out of the vehicles, they're talking to people, they're trying to build relationships to have, I think, a little bit more trust in all the communities, but I find that they spend a lot of time there because it is necessary. But it is tricky when you have a lot of those homes that are owned by investors and by individuals. So it can't all be on the university on that. And also just a misnomer that, folks have said to me about the officers coming from RU. I want to just tell you, these are very highly trained officers. They are full-fledged officers, and we have a great relationship with them and work in coordination. And so I'm sure that there are many conversations that they're still having, and maybe at some point they would apprise us of what they're doing jointly. Sure. So, Chief, sorry. He's always like, how do I get on her list every time? All right, so another thing, when you were talking about the population of the students stabilizing in 2025, my note was, what does that look like? Are we taking any new initiatives that just to stabilize it or to grow it? Are we just kind of waiting for those students that were used to that COVID teaching online remotely? What does that look like when we say we're kind of waiting to stabilize? What all are we doing?
Yeah, if I said waiting to stabilize, that was not what I was intended.
Well, that could have been my perception,
Okay,
so I'm not a direct
stabilizing
quote.
by fall 2025. So there's, you can think of it, there's two things happening. One is attracting new students to campus, and we are, like housing, there's a lot to be done. Some is short-term, which can be kind of turnkey overnight, and then there's things that are much longer term. Very short-term, we are, for example, rebuilding our website. If you go to some institutions, it's a much more easy feel of how to navigate the website, and it's very focused on more and more students, and their their parents are focused on employment. So we are working to kind of re-engineer our website around what students are looking for. So that's an example of many. You know, we had a strategic enrollment strategy forum this fall semester, all built around what are the initiatives that we can develop to stabilize and turn enrollment. My belief for fall 2025, if we do very little, that's where the enrollment will stabilize. My goal is to exceed that, but that's kind of worst case. It could end up there because there's a lot in motion. The other part of it is retaining the students that we have, and as an example of one of the things that we've done is the different service units at the university that support our students. They were in 5 different divisions of the university, and that's difficult to coordinate supporting a student when they're all in different VP areas. It's not that we don't have brilliant VPs, but communication is a real big challenge like that. Those 5 groups have now been pulled together into one office underneath a single VP, and their focus is retaining those students. So they've built a lot of big initiatives. And an example, I will actually give them a shout out right now. Every year, there is a process by which students don't pay their bills in a timely manner, and they are disenrolled from the institution. And our disenrollment just this semester went down 67% compared to last year because they changed how they work together.
Wow.
That's awesome, okay? Again,
Big, yeah.
it's a small piece of many.
Right.
So my goal is for us not to just sit on our laurels, coast to 2025 and see where we go from there. I want to beat those numbers because I think that we owe it to the Commonwealth, we owe it to our students. But there's so much. You could come to campus anytime and join on meetings in different divisions talking about how to make our university more successful at attracting and keeping students.
Can I just add one little piece to that? Telling the story of what happens at Radford and all of us working as ambassadors of the community to attract people here, whether it be faculty and staff to work at the institution that want to be here or students, that helps. That helps tremendously. We have Radford alumni around this table telling your story, telling the story of the people you know that got an amazing start here. That helps sell that to a student that's maybe sitting in Loudoun County or in Chesapeake who's thinking about a lot of opportunities, but they don't know if they see themselves here. I think that's a huge piece, and that's incumbent upon really everybody to be welcoming to this community, to say, this is the place where you're going to get a good start.
Well, and of course, the other part of that is, while you're looking at your recruiting strategies, if there's anything as a city that we need to do, please let us know. I was even thinking, you're talking about your website, maybe even having a link where they can go to the city site and see what we're doing, some of the activities and things, because I think we're all really gearing up for that. So that might be another, and of course, I can't help you design that either. So, but I was thinking just let us know if there's making some availability, some links.
So longer term, I have thoughts around that. If you go to most smaller towns that have a university embedded in them, they have the following elements. It's almost common that the street signs that lead to the university, they're all of the university color. So even though traditional street signs are green, for example, we happen to be red or tartan for those of us that really like that. So those street signs would be red or tartan. the campus community adopts the university name / mascot name, and it's embedded throughout the community. That's handled in a limited fashion, we'll say, in Radford. Another example is that, again, for a lot of universities, where if you look at the Hokies, you will see the Hokie in like every
Everywhere.
shop. When you go into our hotels in our city, people say, "Where's Radford?" There's only Hokie here. Now, again, that is a reflection from others, but we don't celebrate the inclusion of the university. And to be fair, the university hasn't done maybe its fair job of celebrating the city.
We need
So
a big Highlander on the west side.
we do. We need a big old. That's right.
40
So
grand and we
so
can do
it. That's right.
so longer term, it really is about co-branding and celebrating together. So it's a singular message. On the short term, I really think that things that we can do around the outdoor experience, you know, the Riverway is an example, but those are experiences where people cannot get them in other places in the Commonwealth. We have a distinctive opportunity, but we have not taken advantage of that. So short term, those are things that will make us stand out. Again, start making us that destination for education, which is what we need. So as we develop those projects, we are going to be working to advertise those to our students, and that's just a big opportunity. It also helps tourism. All right, so there's a win on both sides for that.
I was going to say a couple more highlight videos from last Thursday's game would do good.
There you go, very good. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And so I know people say there are no dumb questions. I happen to be a big fan of dumb questions and ask them often, so here goes. So there is a lot of activity on Main Street with builds. You're doing a lot of different buildings. And I know you mentioned the new art building. Can you tell me and maybe other people that don't know, what are the buildings that are currently being erected? And are one of those part of the art building you're talking about, or is that a new?
That's just a kayak, yeah, and I don't think we've got any other construction on Main, and really, that's our really only construction project.
It's a good one.
We're
It's a big
taking-
project.
so-
I wasn't sure
Yeah,
how.
no, it's a
was it?
very big
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
We are renovating 2 dorms this year. Those are year-and-a-half projects? Year-and-a-half projects? So, but those are internal kind of construction projects. So one of the things that people don't realize is how sustainable our campus is. So there is a building system called LEED, Leadership for Environmental and Energy Design, and it reflects, you can think about it as how much energy and water the building uses and also how healthy the building is to stay in. Do you have a window in your office? Believe it or not, that matters, right? Okay, if you've been in an office without a window, you know that impact. So LEED is about how environmentally sustainable and healthy these buildings are. 35% of our footprint is currently LEED certified, of which it's almost all gold with 1 silver building. I haven't found, I've been doing my own little research, I found 2 private institutions in the nation that are at 31%. We're at 35%. So it's up there, okay? The Archaic building and our dorm renovations are going to also be LEED certified. So George will be swinging close to 50% by when that's finished?
See, but taking 3 buildings offline and 1 coming back on, that will
Yeah.
actually increase. I haven't run those numbers.
So we are close to pole position in the nation for this,
Wonderful.
which is awesome, but you can't find it on our website.
Right,
Okay?
right.
It matters to a lot of students, so you
Yeah,
take
sure.
that passion about keeping our environment, preserving it for others, along with those outdoor amenities. Again, that's not just a destination for the Commonwealth, that's a big attractor. And so again, when you see those projects, the university has done a wonderful job for 15, 20 plus years in building its campus that way. So there's a long tradition of doing so. And I'm taking too long on this, but there are a lot of communities that have co-planned that type of sustainability. And again, that's an attraction, yes, to students, but there's also people that come to be in those communities, to live, to, again, to to celebrate, to be a tourist. So the university has done this, and that just might be a great partnership opportunity for down the road.
Absolutely.
When are you looking at the art building being completed-ish?
Ish, yeah. So it was spring '24, and then pipelines, and now while I can say it's hopeful it would be December '24, the window has been moving a lot lately, so it's I can say there's a high likelihood we may miss that window, but hope springs eternal, right?
Right. And just because it went fast, the name of it, I know it's an acronym. What is that?
So it's the Artis Center for Adaptive Innovation and Creativity. You can think about the
Okay.
arts as being a creative element in universities, and they're blending it with the health sciences. So they're they will be getting the disciplines of the students working in very different areas to be working together, from performances to laboratory experiences, again, to try to make it a very different environment for
And you're
student
pronouncing that
experiences.
how exactly?
We are shortcutting it to be ACAIC.
Archaic, okay.
ACAIC.
Okay, just wanted to catch
It's
that.
like my
It went
last,
real fast and I
yeah,
couldn't,
yeah.
what's that letter? So when you were talking about the River Campus concept, so what come to my mind on that, as you're talking about looking at recruitment of new students, maybe different types of students, are you looking at that being primarily recreationally focused? Are you looking at advancing additional majors to include the waterway or labs?
Very fair question, Jesse. I can't answer that off the top of my head. If I remember right, there was a lot of athletic and water use.
Research
Yep.
opportunities.
How can we, yeah.
Okay, but that's what the plan was. I think noting that it's a great space to develop is important. I
do
think
too.
conceptually, that was the importance. What it looks like now is changed, because I think with the university's strategic plan, there was plans for growth, et cetera, and that might look different if we were a campus of 10,000 students rather than, in some ways, of 5,000
Right.
students.
Or maybe changing it so we could get a different type of student that maybe hadn't considered,
Yep.
RU with that. That's just, let me know when you want to give me a higher.
Okay.
So the other thing is, and Angela, you're going to have to help me because I am not a scholar or an academic. When you mentioned the hub, I don't even have a good visual for what you're talking about. I have no idea if I'm a student what that means, if I'm a local business. Do I put an office in there, or do I set up a time students can come talk to me? Are you going to have a grant writer that local businesses can go to? Do we provide the grant writer? What is this?
Yeah, so great question. I think this is one of those opportunities from an economic development standpoint where it's co-located spaces for us to work together on economic development. I think this is more outward-facing than student-facing, because
Okay.
we have our Student Venture Lab for Entrepreneurship on campus for our students. But it's a great opportunity to bring and leverage faculty expertise for small businesses, support for emerging businesses. When I mentioned the Vinod Chatra Impact Lab, we've done several projects in the area for training and development.
So why
there's-
don't you spell that for me, and then I can go look that up as well? Seriously, because
get it out to
you're
everybody.
using it, but I don't know what that, I don't
It
have
is
a
the
frame
name
of
someone,
reference
but
for
it's
that.
essentially our workforce development arm. It's online, it's self-paced, and we have trained several folks using that online self-paced because they're typically adult learners. That will only be one part of the space, but shared offices, shared opportunity for conference spaces to do programming in that space. So there's several other centers, if you will, that are very similar to that. There's one in Stanton, there's one in Martinsville that's similar to it, where you're really trying to bring the community for economic development support and business support. And that's the whole sense. It should have programming, co-located space, opportunity for training, bringing in faculty expertise where we can, potentially for some consulting. And so we're looking at a broad range. And part of that really is understanding what the need of the city is. So how do we help businesses and organizations thrive, and where are they in that life stage for us to determine what services and support is going to be needed? And that's kind of where we are now, outside of we know where we're going to be moving the Impact Lab, which was
So what I
located
would
in Martin
like
Park.
to do perhaps, and it looks like the mayor is a little bit more informed and has a little more knowledge on this, but I would like to take a field trip, because I know that it sounds like we're not necessarily recreating the wheel, but perhaps I need a visual for it. Maybe go there and talk with them and kind of see exactly what it means and how it benefits the community and what our participation would be in it. So I know we can only go
I'm
two
up
at
for
a
that,
time,
that's
but-
fine.
Do you think that all that would be able to be contained in the old SunTrust building, or would it eventually need to expand, or?
I think we'll start in the SunTrust, I mean, yes, in the SunTrust building based on what we need. I think the footprint is larger than what we do. The Impact Lab, I'll start with that, is typically completely online. So they're producing content, which frees up a fair amount of space. It depends on what the need is in the city, and there's also other partnerships that we're considering to support it.
Bobby, you had
But I
another
think-
question?
Okay, Bobby.
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, the one question I do have, well, it's not a question, it's really a statement. I think the one thing that is a fix-all is jobs. So I think that's, we talk about housing, and I know we talk about jobs, but, but really, it's really it really is a fix-all. So anyway, I think that's, I think that's the biggest thing that's going to, probably it is the biggest thing, because that's revenue, it's a win-win. So, and I think everything that we have discussed tonight, and I know there's no, pixie dust or anything else out there, but the jobs are I think are the key. Yeah, of course, we only got 10 miles to grow.
Right, but to Angela's point and to what Jesse was asking, this kind of hub concept can spin off jobs, can help make it possible for jobs that aren't possible in our area now. It can be an incubator that helps someone with a great idea grow their business concept, and someone with a business grow their concept to even greater potential. So there's all kinds of opportunity with that. The other piece is it allows us to leverage partnerships in Roanoke and Blacksburg, throughout Southwest Virginia, different agencies and different organizations to be a part of that concept, so that it is sort of that one-stop shopping. And that if you need to work on economic development, on your business, on your idea, there's a place to go. It's a hub. I know you got a lot more. Do
I
you
got
have a couple
one
more things you want to talk about?
No, one more thing, and that is just, I think, you've heard all of us touch on it as a concern, but the cogeneration project is something that is sort of an open wound for us right now, because we do have a decline in that student population. So that's an impact for us. And then, going off a grid, which we're able to provide some additional stabilization to the community. I think it's going to be really super important going forward, since you are talking about leveraging that savings and reinvesting it in our community, that we make sure to get that out front and center. Because I think right now there's an impression that it's more of a self-serving move, and I think that in our conversations, because this isn't our first conversation, we've talked about it before, you are really looking at it as another way to reinvest in the community and also have less of a footprint. So I think we just need to make sure, as a community in general, that we understand exactly what's going on, and we keep communicating to the community to make sure that there's not that strife that we've seen kind of under the surface. And again, I just want to thank everyone for coming and being so open to have these conversations with us, because truly, we all have the same goal. It's symbiotic. So we just have to figure out how to get there, and knowing that we have good partners in that process and that we're all on the same team and we all recognize that is huge. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll probably email you with 20 more questions before I go to bed tonight, but thank you again.
Sure. Well, and this is a beginning. This is not an end. This is not an end-all, be-all. And the real heavy work begins with this. As you hear, there's so many opportunities, but each thing we talked about is going to require a team of people, whether it's the folks sitting around this table, whether it's our networks of people, whether it's our folks sitting in the audience watching online. It's all the people of our community coming together to make these things a reality. The answer is yes. We're going to do all this. It's how we get to yes and how we make it happen, how quickly, how robustly, how how we are able to work together as a community to make all these things happen. I'm excited talking about this and thinking about this. All the possibilities are right here in front of us, and there is nothing we've talked about this evening that is totally pie in the sky that's impossible for us to do. Everything is achievable if it's something that we make a goal as a community. And imagine Radford 4 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road with many of these things we've talked about operating and running in different ways, serving our community, making the quality of life better, attracting people here, and providing the kind of resources that allow us to be the community we want to be. This is our path to the future. We just have to find the way to make it happen and work together on that. Thank you all for being a part of this discussion. I did want to mention one thing that we did not talk about at all, and that was intentional. There is an opportunity with the university and the school system. There's discussions taking place. We didn't get into that tonight. There will be additional discussions and all kinds of things happening. The university already works very closely with the school system and vice versa. I thought it was pretty cool when the Highlander Band and the Radford High School Band performed together over the break. The high school band was the official pep band for the basketball games a couple of times, and it is just a real neat partnership. But to that end, the school board is going to have a special meeting on Thursday night to talk about some other issues, primarily about the stadium at the high school. So for those of you that are here, tune in on Thursday night on their YouTube channel or head out to the school board office and participate in that at 6 o'clock. That'll be a good community discussion as well. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody here from council, from the university. This is how we move forward. Our future is bright, and we're going to get there together. So with that, we'll say thank you and good night. Good night.
I know this was an unplanned meeting for you all, so